Okay, so we're getting to the end of our Aubiose trial. So we've had 10 bales to test this bed with. We laid it with 3 beds on the original bed base, which is now gone. So the original base is now gone, the old bed is gone. We've got to the stage now where we are just on an Aubiose bed, and we've been going for a couple of weeks now, so I thought we'd just go with some tips and tricks that we've been going with this bed. We've been talking to a lot of people over Facebook and forums, just getting their opinion as well, as to how they do the beds. So this is the afternoon after show day. Horse was really nice and clean this morning, which was quite nice to get up and not have to do some mass cleaning. Even though he'd obviously had quite a big party in here, he'd rolled one of the sort of areas of the base open a little bit where he's obviously had a party, and he does play hyper-poop. Obviously, as I said before, I don't mind him playing hyper-poop because it does keep him nice and clean. What it does mean is this bed does take me slightly longer than the other beds to muck out. But I'm getting used to the fork again. On the last couple of beds we've trialled and been using, we've been sort of putting gloves on, hands, you know, bending down into a bucket. But we've had to go back to using a fork for this bed. So it's taken me a while to get my body back to adjusting to scraping with the fork. But to be perfectly honest, it doesn't take a lot longer. But what it does mean is I do have to scrape up the top in the mornings to get to obviously loosen the poo off so it drops off the banks. So I've started to leave it up during the day and just have the base open to the air. I've just put the small fine layer back down onto the bed, and I've just covered the wet patches. I'm slightly OCD with my bed, so watching wet patches form and not picking them out or disturbing them is quite tricky, so I do have to stop myself. But what I've started doing is basically literally just coming up to the wet patch and just stomping along, flattening it out, making sure it's you know, stomped in, forming a nice base layer. And I know when I come back in the morning that it's going to still be dry on top, so I've got the confidence now that I can leave the Aubiose wet and see how it goes with regards to when and where I take the wet out. Haven't quite decided on the wet routine yet. Have done every other week, and looked at maybe just trying to just open the top up every now and again just to have a little look, but I'm trying not to, so I try not to disturb it. So basically, if it comes through while I'm throwing up the main bed to get the poo out, I'm having a quick look, but otherwise just stamping it back down to make sure that the base is nice and solid. Some forums have said, you know, ideally don't touch the banks, don't try and disturb the bed if you can, but that's not possible with this horse. I do have to throw the main bed up to muck him out, but I haven't had a problem with the main bed moving. As I said, last night was the first time over the last couple of weeks that he's actually disturbed the base. That's the only time, and it was after I'd removed the wet. So I may try and leave the wet in a little bit longer. On my base, where I'd taken the wet out, I don't think my base was deep enough, so he just scuffed it all up where he'd had a good roll overnight. So I'm going to build the base back up again, make sure it's a good couple of inches thick. Obviously these banks I'll pull down later, but I think definitely the trick is to try and disturb as little as possible, stomp the wet back down to form a nice base, and then if you do have to flick it up to get the poo out, just obviously disturb as little as you can, and then try and bring down the older bedding not the newer, slightly unsettled bed. I haven't sprayed any of this bed. Didn't spray it to begin with. Haven't sprayed it when it's been new. I try and put the new on the banks first so it can take a little bit of moisture from the air. Because we've got outdoor stables, I find that the new bedding does take up some of the dampness of the air from the walls and the floor anyway. So I haven't used any spray and I put the bed down. What I do is when I get the base up, if it's a little bit smelly, which obviously it can be from time to time, I will just use my oh, the sun's out, you can't really see. I will use my aqueous disinfectant deodorizer and literally just spray the top where the wet is. The aqueous sprays don't smell, but they are effective deodorizer. They also have an antibacterial, antifungal property, so I'm sort of killing two birds, so to speak, at the same time, while I just quickly spray the bed. So that's only when it gets a little bit smelly. The horse next door does cough, has a stable cough, and if the ammonia builds up, he will cough and react against it. So although he's not on an Aubiose bed yet, obviously there is some air between the two stables. They're not solid partitions all the way through, so I am aware that as I'm building this back up to a deep litter, I do need to be careful of making sure this one is deodorised. But to be fair, as I say, I haven't really noticed any smell in here, and I'm going to try and leave the wet down a little bit longer if I can. Try and disturb the bed as little as possible, see how we go. We still have some of our bales left out of the original 10. It's been fantastically cost effective. So we'll see how we go and give you an update in a couple of weeks. Thank you.